So now we want to construct a relative frequency distribution. The relative frequency distribution starts out the same way the regular frequency distribution did, by finding the frequency of each class. But your job is to remember that relative means you're comparing it to something. Relative is always compared to something, and in this case it's going to be comparing that part, that class, out of the whole. So basically we're just turning things into percents, which we know how to do. So if we read the problem, use the given data to construct a relative frequency distribution. And again, we have the math test, the scores of 16 students listed. We're still using the 4 classes, beginning with a lower class limit of 60 with a class width of 10. So the same situation as in our previous distribution. This time, of course, we are going to round percents to nearest tenth. In your homework, sometimes they have the percent sign already there. Sometimes your job is to remember that you're turning it into a percent, so keep that in mind. And so, again, we're going to have the scores in our first column, and we're just going to fill in the same classes we had previously. So 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 99. And in fact, we still have the same frequencies, but in the second column, you want to label it relative frequencies. And just keep in mind, every time you see that relative, you're turning it into a comparison, in this case, a percent. And so I'm going to start by writing the frequencies we found from the previous chart. 1, 9, 4, 2. That's the raw data, the raw frequency. But this time we need to compare it to the whole. And if you'll remember last time, we added it all up to begin with and ended up with 16, which matches how many students we knew were in the data. And so we're simply just going to divide 1 by 16, 9 divided by 16, 4 divided by 16, 2 divided by 16. Relative is just part out of the whole, a comparison. You want to always be sure, especially on our computer homework and tests and quizzes, to check what they want as the answer. Do they want you to leave it as a decimal, or in this case they want you to turn it into the percent and round the percent to the nearest tenth? Keep in mind that order is important. You don't round until it's a percent. So if you've got your calculator and you do 1 divided by 16, I just pulled out my graphing calculator, and so 1 divided by 16 is 0.0625. Remember, you can just move the decimal 2 places, or if you prefer, you can type in times 100. That'll move the decimal 2 places for you. So we have 6.25%, if you want to write that. But again, remember, we're rounding to the nearest tenth, so the 5 makes the 0.2 become 6.3%. Remember, a percent is not a percent unless it has the percent sign. And then we just keep doing it. So on the calculator again, 9 divided by 16. If you want to multiply times 100 or move the decimal 2 places, 56.25. So again, the 5 is going to make the 2 go up. So I'm going to write 56.3%. Same thing with 4 divided by 16. You might remember this one. Reduces to 1/4, so 0.25. If we multiply by 100, that just gives us 25% even. So no decimal there, 25%. And the last one, 2/16, 2 divided by 16 times 100, you can do it all in the same step if you want to, gives us 12.5. So again, we don't have to round because it's already to the tenths. Now, in a perfect world, those would all add up to 100%. If you can look, you can tell it's not going to because of the 3 and the 3 and the 5. But it's going to be very, very close. And when you're rounding things, sometimes that happens. It's not exactly 100%, but it's close enough. So whenever you see relative, you're turning it into a percent part out of the whole. Get your frequencies, get your total, and then divide each one and make sure that you are turning them into a percent and rounding them if that's what it's asking for.